Hello and welcome to the Charles Cook Podcast. The focus of this podcast is local and state issues here in the state of Tennessee. I want to remind you that you can follow my podcast on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, TuneIn, and Alexa. You can also follow me on Rumble. All you need to do to find me on any of those platforms is search Charles Cook Podcast, and you should be able to find it. Just like and subscribe, follow whichever of those platforms allow you to do, and then you'll be notified whenever I upload a new podcast. You can also find those links on my podcast webpage at charlescookpodcast.buzzsprout.com. All right. And you can also, if you would like to email me about joining a podcast, talking about an issue, just email me at charlescookpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, we got that out of the way. Let's get started here. So, a lot of things going on in the state of Tennessee this week in the Nashville area, from local election laws, votes to be changed, votes on changing some of the local election laws, to abortion, votes to close primary elections, all this and that. As I said, a lot of things, gun rights, the typical things that usually go on in Nashville. But at the end of the week, we have the big thing that most people are talking about and most news channels are trying to cover now. And that's the Randy McNally story. And, thing is, for me, I'm not going to be on here and I'm not going to defend most politicians. I don't know, throughout the country, you could probably count the politicians that I really put any stock in on both hands at the top, both hands and both feet. So, I'm not going to get into that. Most politicians do what they want to do. And as long as, that's up to them. The only thing that affects me, the only thing that affects you really is how they vote. And that's all that matters. And their personal life, what they do in their personal life, is as long as they're not harming other people, physically harming people, then, it is what it is. So that's the way I look at most things. I'm basically a conservative that leans libertarian, and that's my view on politics in life. So anyway, the big stinker of, and I watched the video, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, is because it kind of throwed up some red flags to me if you look at it at a point of view. So if most of you know, some of you may not know, but apparently our Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally out of the Oak Ridge area had made some comments on Twitter on a gay gentleman's Twitter page about some pictures and stuff that he made, complimenting him on them, and very positive comments and stuff, and liking them, putting hearts and little fire emojis on them and stuff. And hey, that's what he wants to do. That's him. If it's actually him doing it, he's 79-year-old using Twitter. So if it's actually him doing it, then that's up to him. That's his business. And if it's a staffer or someone that used to have access to his Twitter page, I don't know. Not going to, like I said, I'm not going to argue it either way. But so when he shows up at the Capitol the other day, one of the local left-leaning news outlets, kind of left-leaning grassroots news outlets, shows up and, does the ambush gotcha stuff. So I want to play you part of that today, and I'm going to play it through and let you hear the the large portion of it. And then I'm going to come back and play it again. And then I'm going to make comments as we go by, because as I listened to it and thought about it, it throwed up some red flags to me. So with that being said, I want to pull this up here, and I'll just play it, and I won't share it on the screen because most people, if listening on to audio, they won't see it anyway. So, but you can hear it, and I'll just let it play and then stop it when it gets done and replay it and do a kind of a play-by-play on it.
Anti-gay.
That's great. But why do you pass anti-gay bills?
Well, we pass bills that kind of limit certain things. There's safeguards in those bills.
This is the most anti-gay legislature in the entire country.
Oh, I don't think so.
Meanwhile, you're commenting on pictures that are very.
Adam, what did you got?
I know you have any comments, I guess.
On what?
On the votes, I guess. What do you, on the,
These posts.
The comments. Try to encourage people on my post, and I try to support people just because he's gay. I also have friends that are gay, relatives that are gay, but I don't feel any animosity towards gay.
do you find it a little bit hypocritical legislation to ban gay marriage?
That was before the Supreme Court decision, and I thought that a marriage should be between a man and a woman. And I still kind of feel that way. But I still have friends that are married. The adoption bill I spoke against was not needed.
Has your views evolved, I guess? Do you support gay marriage now?
That's what the Supreme Court has said. Until they change that, I have to abide by what they said.
Man is retired because he felt bullied.
He's a friend.
I know, but don't you feel like you're spearheading bullying monkeys? Feel free to come back, Adam.
Okay. So let me reset this thing and come back here. And so you heard that, and hopefully you can understand it pretty good on the audio. So it starts out with, and he's making a comment that he's not anti-gay. And then the conversation goes from there. So I'm going to pull this back up, and I'm going to play that part, and then I'm going to pause it because I want to talk about it.
Anti-gay.
That's great. But why anti-gay bills?
Okay. He says, I'm not anti-gay. And the reporter from this left-wing agency says, that's great. That's great. Then why do you pass anti-gay bills? Okay. I'm trying to think here in the state of Tennessee this year. What have we done? What has the legislature done that's anti-gay? I'm thinking. And from conservative libertarian point of view, really can't think of any bills that have been passed that are actually anti-gay. Okay. But let's see. What could they be talking about? Well, what they're talking about is bills that have been passed and been signed by the governor already to protect children from surgeries that are being performed on underage children. Procedures that were hormone blockers are given out to children and teenagers to keep them from developing. A couple things like that has been passed this year. And also then we have the drag queen bills that makes it illegal to perform drag queen shows in front of minors, kids. So I guess that's what they're referring to as anti-gay. Now, I'm in my mid-50s, And so I remember a lot of this stuff. And I thought the gay movement was about love being loved, and you know, people who supposedly, same-sex couples that loved each other was the gay movement, that they wanted to be together, and they felt like that's what, that people were shaming them and stopping them from being together, kind of like interracial marriage and stuff. So that was the love is love, and let that go. And so many people was like, okay, you do you, and I'll do me, and you do your thing, and I'll do my thing, and we all be happy. But it didn't end there. And now we see where this is going. And if you do something to protect kids and everything, this is now being called anti-gay. I don't kind of, if you stand up for kids, stand against kids making decisions at 10, 11, 12, 13-year old to go have body altering surgeries or taking hormones to keep them from developing fully, you're anti-gay. But let's flip this around. So if a mother had a 10-year-old daughter that said, okay, the daughter feels like she's got some friends that's older, that's developed more, and the 10-year-old daughter said, Mama, I want to have breast implants put in. She's not even had a chance to develop yet. And the mother takes her to a surgeon, and the surgeon says, no, I'm not going to do that. She's 10 years old. She's not even had a chance to even start developing yet. Why would I do that? She's a minor. Is that doctor anti-straight, anti-heterosexual because he wouldn't perform that surgery? And we shouldn't be doing surgeries like that. If we look at the drag queen stuff, if there's fathers, there's parents out there, it's not on the father mother of the year list, that they want to take their son to a 13-year-old son to a strip bar. They're not allowed to do that. So what's wrong with, passing a law that says you can't take and expose your kids to these sexualized transgender shows? There's nothing wrong with that. They're not saying you can't have transgender shows. They're just saying you can't have kids there. Just like they're not saying you can't have a strip bar. They're just saying that you can't have kids there. But all of a sudden, if you do this with a drag queen show, it's anti-gay. If you can't perform these gender altering surgeries, it's anti-gay. If you can't give a kid, hormone blockers, that's anti-gay. That's all that's been passed this year. So I don't know where this reporter is coming from, but they're trying to push an agenda. If you do something that against what they're pushing, then you're anti-gay. When gay rights and the gay movement was supposed to have been about love is love. But so far, we've seen where this is going now. Okay, so let's pull this back up and listen to a little bit more.
Well, we passed bills that kind of limit certain things. There's safeguards in those bills.
This is the most anti-gay legislature in the entire country.
No, I don't think so.
While you're commenting on pictures that are very
Adam, what
much
have you
like
got?
I know you have any comments, I guess?
On what?
On the post, I guess. What do you, on the,
The comments, try to encourage people on my posts, and I try to support people just because he's gay. I also have friends that are gay, relatives that are gay, but I don't feel any animosity towards gay.
do you find it a little bit hypocritical?
Okay, so here they are asking him about making comments on Twitter post that, you know, I'm not going to defend them, whatever. That's his business. It's his Twitter account. He can follow whoever he wants to follow, and he can make whatever comments that he wants to make. But here's the thing. If he comments positively and says something positive, then he's a hypocrite. Okay. But if he were to comment on something and say something negative, then what would they call him? A bigot? So you're kind of in a no-win situation by commenting. You'd have been better off to just not follow those people, that person, and or not comment at all. But this is what happens. If you're positive about something, try to encourage somebody, you're a hypocrite. If you try to say something and discourage their behavior, you're a bigot. Bottom line, that's the way it goes. But he should have never commented, but it just goes to show you, either way, you're in a no-win situation with these left-leaning groups, especially these reporters. You're either a hypocrite or a bigot. So play a little bit more of it.
That before the Supreme Court decision, and I thought that a marriage should be between a man and a woman. And I still kind of feel that way. But I still have friends that have married. The adoption bill I spoke against was not needed.
Has your views evolved, I guess? Do you support gay marriage now?
That's what the Supreme Court has said. Until they change that, I have to abide by what they said. And
Okay. So drop that back a few more seconds here before I come back. So now they're asking him about gay marriage. All because of comments on some Twitter posts. And he said he've always felt like that marriage was between a man and a woman. And there's a lot of people out there that feel that way. That marriage itself, which is a biblical term used that brings a man and a woman together in marriage through the eyes of God, is a biblical term. And that's the way a lot of people see it. But there's also a lot of people out there that says, hey, if that's what you want to do, you do you. If the government wants to give you a civil union wherever legal issues or wills, tax purposes, whatever, you do you. That's the government. The government is separate from God. If that's what you want to do it. But no, that's not what happened. We had to tie it to marriage in biblical definitions and stuff. And a lot of people still have issues with it. That a marriage is between a man and a woman. Now, I will say this. The so-called Christians don't help themselves when they talk about the sanctity of marriage. They're in their own marriage number 3, 4, 5, 6. And they want to talk about sanctity of marriage being between a man and a woman, and they're on 3, 4, 5, 6. So they don't help themselves. But to this point, the guy still, as he said, I still kind of believe whether you do or you don't. But, you know, here they are asking him about it. But as I said, there's many people out there that have the thoughts like I have. Hey, you have to answer for yourself. You're an adult. You can do what you want to. You choose what you want to do. You do you, and I'll do me. But it's not good enough anymore. Just keep pushing. And if you don't agree with the stance, you're anti-gay. All right, so let's play this some more.
Till they change that, I have to ride by what they said.
Retire because he felt bullied.
He's a friend.
I know, but don't you feel like you're spearheading the bullying?
Okay. So the Eddie Manus issue. Many of you know about the Eddie Manus deal. Knox County got elected to the state House of Representatives. They say he's openly gay. He got elected as a Republican. Many of you may not know the story with that, but I've covered it before. But he was basically donated to Democrats and everything, and a lot of Republicans, a lot of so-called Republicans, or should I say so-called conservatives, went to bat for him. And even though they knew that he donated to the Democratic Party, it's not got anything to do with his lifestyle. Not at all. It's about who he gave his money to. But they went to bat for him and got him on the ballot. And the Republican Party let him run as a Republican. But when he got to Nashville, he voted for things that was outside the conservative realm and voted for the boys and girls sports stuff and voted or for or against it. If they had the boys in bathrooms, girls bathroom stuff, and all those legislation, if it was, saying that only boys could use the boys bathroom and the girls could only use the girls bathroom, then he voted against that. And a lot of those Republicans that supported him and helped him and everything said, hey, dude, I'm getting crushed over here because of you're doing this stuff. And now I got to go explain it to everyone. You need to chill out what you're doing. You're not actually voting for the party that you chose to run for. And so they considered that bullying. They didn't let him vote the way he wanted to. Well, I mean, he chose to run because he knew he was going to lose the primary. And, when he went to Nashville, he got voted in. He got voted in as a so-called conservative Republican, went to Nashville, voted more with the Democrats than anything. And the constituents and people in his district did not like it. And now they consider that bullying. So, that's not the lieutenant governor's fault. That's not the speaker of the House's fault. You go to Nashville, your votes are on record, and people's going to find out what you done. Hopefully they will. A lot of people are asleep and don't pay attention. But in that race, it was a high profile race, and people were paying attention. They were making notes. They were going to watch him. And that's exactly what they did. So in the end, as you've seen there, this is how these reporters reacted. Everything that they did to protect kids from these surgeries or these puberty blockers or the sexualization of this stuff was anti-gay. I don't want kids being in front of a man and a woman, even though they're not fully nude and they got sexually provocative clothing on, bumping and grinding on one another, even though it's a man and a woman. Why do we want to be exposing kids to this stuff and bringing them to the sexualizing their life? They don't need to be seeing that. But do we call that anti-straight because it's a man and a woman doing it? No. Do we call it anti-heterosexual? No. We call it common sense that we don't want our kids seeing this stuff, that we don't want kids being exposed to it, even though there may be parents out there that says, well, I don't mind my child. She's 6 years old and she knows what she wants to be. No, if that was the case, I'd have probably been a cowboy part of my life. I'd have been an Indian part of my life. I'd have been a U.S. Marine part of my life or whatever. But we grow up and we choose later. There's plenty of kids that choose what they want to do, go to college and change their major because they find out it's not what they thought it was. And people change. And when you go have one of these surgeries, when you're underage and you have something like that done, it's permanent. And it scars these people. Even people that are adults who are confused about things that might have went through some bad things when they were kids, you know, made bad decisions as young adults who get in their 30s and 40s and realize, oh, I wish I hadn't have done that. Even with tattoos, you know, I love Susie. Yeah. 2 years later, they're divorced, they're never even married, and he's got that name on his arm. They're real proud of that decision. It's common sense. How in the world can something be anti-gay when you're doing stuff like, I mean, when you're trying to protect kids and what they do? But that's how these reporters do this stuff. You know, if they want to ask questions about whatever, that's fine. But you're not anti-gay because you're trying to protect kids. And that's what needs to be said. And that's not what these news channels are doing. The News Channel 5 out of Nashville does a sit down interview with him. You know, if it would have been Eddie Manis, they would have never asked those questions. They never did. When he voted the way he did in Nashville, they didn't set him down and pose those questions to him. But you see where we are. Anything that doesn't go with the agenda is anti whatever. So when you're trying to protect kids now, and try to give them a little bit of normal childhood so they're not exposed to these things, and that decisions that they make now that they think they want now doesn't come back and haunt them later, and they have to live with it. It's anti-gay because you're trying to protect kids. And this is where we're at in the United States of America, in the state of Tennessee. Who would have ever thunk it? But this is where we're at. And remember, you're my age, maybe don't have to be my age, maybe a little older, a little younger. But this was the love is love. And look where we're at now. And for those people who truly do believe and really did support the movement of love is love, you are to be speaking up loudly and saying, no, you have hijacked what many tried to do to just have a somewhat normal life. And this is what y'all have hijacked it and turned it into. You know, choices have consequences, and these kids making these kind of choices will affect them for the rest of their lives. I seen a young lady on Twitter yesterday and had an abortion the week before and regrets it every day. And I seen ladies replying to her on Twitter. Had one 5 years ago. Not a day goes by that I don't regret it. 10 years ago, worst decision I ever made. It'll never happen again. When you make these decisions, they're permanent. So I think we should do what we can do to protect these kids, and at least until they get enough where they're an adult. Because what's a parent going to do when a 25-year-old looks at you and says, "Dad, why didn't you stop me? I ruined my life. I was 12 years old and you let me do this. Why did you let me do this? I was a child. Why did you let me do this, Dad?" As a father, that's a haunting feeling. So, what I would tell you, take a look at what the left is doing with this stuff and call them out on it because it's sick. With that, I say, have a great day. Try to have a good week. We know we're going to see it again. The evil's all around the world and it's going to keep going. But we got to speak up against it and call it out when we see it. And I say, pray for our youth, pray for our country, pray for each other, pray for the folks that's doing this, because only Jesus can change their hearts. With that, have a great day. God bless you. And we'll see you again on the next podcast. Bye bye.